Hey everyone. I wanted to take the opportunity to show you how I did the alpha channels, which I'll explain in a little bit, on those Aurasmas, so that it felt like those beer bottles were floating over the top of our trigger images. So I had to use Adobe After Effects and Adobe Media Encoder in order to do that. Now I know both of these programs, especially After Effects, can be daunting for some folks, but we're not going to dive deep into it. I just mostly want to explain the process and what the alpha channels are in order to create that effect. So the first thing I want to do is explain that we need to make sure that we get our images that we want to have floating as PNG or PNG images. And what that means is that they're cut out, okay? So if you had a JPEG, it would just be like a box. But if you have a PNG, it's going to be a cutout, okay? So when you do your search, make sure you do, beer bottle PNG. And then so these images, when you import them into After Effects, they'll already have that cutout that you need, okay? So I'm going to hop over here to After Effects. And where are we? There we are. So if we go over to the Bierstein comp, or composition, I should say, and right here, this is kind of where it started. So you'll see like all these crazy layers, and there's the Bierstein, there's the bottles flying around. So we're not going to worry about that too much because, it's just a lot of layers and too much to look at. So we'll just have the one layer. And After Effects is a motion graphics and works based on keyframes. And what that means is that you set a keyframe here, and you there we go. Set a keyframe, and then you go in the future and you set another keyframe and you make your movement. So in this case I did moved it down and to the left and did a rotation on it in order to get that effect. But we won't worry about that too much. What we're more concerned about is our alpha channels. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bigger. Now, if you look at, there's a tool right here, it's red, green, and blue. And if I go down here, I select it and came down here, and I go to alpha channel, it shows me the alpha channel. Now right now it's just a white box. And what that means is the entire image is the alpha channel. And that's because we have our background layer. Now if I go and hide the background layer, then what we're going to have is just the beer bottle, okay? So an alpha channel it's black and white, and the black is, and what it does is it tells the program when you export it, it says like anything that's white, leave that image. Anything that's black goes away. So that way it cuts out the area that you want to cut out. So if I go back to our full RGB, you'll see a plain black background and our beer bottle. So that's what we want. We want it to be floating. So really the biggest deal with this whole process in Aurasma is to do all of our exporting properly, to get the right file types. And that was actually the biggest challenge. So the first thing I had to do was export it from After Effects and then take it to another program, Adobe Media Encoder, to get it to the Flash format that they seem to love in Aurasma. So what I did is I did my File, Export, and Add to Media Encoder Queue. And so you end up with this little queue that pops up, and then you have your options. And it'll default, I'll put it back here, it'll default to lossless, that's your output, and your render settings will be best settings, that's fine. So, but here's where you want to change, from lossless to lossless with alpha. Makes sense? So we're telling it, when you make this video, keep that alpha channel. And then right here you say where you want to save it. And then you'll hit render. And I already did all this, so we don't have to go through the render process. So we're going to pop over here to Adobe Media Encoder. And this is where I'm going to convert that file we just made, okay, which is an AVI file, and I'm going to convert it into a Flash file that Aurasma likes. So all I do is I hit the plus button over here. I'm going to hit plus, and then I'm going to go in, find that Bierstein Alpha. There it is. Say open. It's going to pop in here. I have this 3 drop downs, okay? And the first drop down is gives me all my options of types of files I can export it as. JPEG, H.264, QuickTime Movie, there's a bunch, AVI, but we want FLV. You don't have to worry about all these, just worry about the ones you need. So I'm gonna click on FLV for our flash file. And this is, what quality do you want it to be? There's all these options, frame rates, mobile, web. So right now it just says high quality, which is great, high quality is good, and we're gonna click on that to make any kind of changes. And what you'll see is we get this option to make all these detailed changes, but the only thing we have to worry about is right here, encode alpha channel. And we want to check that box. So when you make this movie, keep that alpha channel, right? We're going to click OK. And then right here is where you will, it says, you know, where you're going to save it. So you choose where you want to save it, and you'll hit the plus, the play button, which it tells it to render, which I already did that, of course. So if you hop into Aurasma and you go to your assets, go to your overlays, you're going to add an overlay. There we go, create new overlay. And you're going to bring it in just as a video file. When you go to browse, you're going to look for that FLV file, beer alpha test, what I called it, and you're going to hit open, and you're going to bring it on in. And so I already did that. So it's right there, and you'll see it's gray, and then it's got the floating beer bottles just the way we want it. And then when you make your asset, that's what you'll do is you'll add that layer on top of your trigger, and then you'll get that effect that we're all desiring as far as having that feel like it's floating over our real life situation there. So, I hope that's not too complicated. I know the programs themselves can be complicated, but it's really just a matter of working on figuring out the alpha channel and exporting it to a flash file with an alpha channel. So it's a little different, it's a little challenging, but it's well worth it. I mean, as you saw, it's like it really makes some magic happen when you're looking at something in real life and things feel like it's flying over it. So I really enjoyed that. So give it a try. I think the reward is really high if you can take the time. The Digital Media Studio at the library does have all these tools necessary to do this. I understand there may be other programs out there that you can also export Flash files with alpha. I believe one of them is Adobe Animate, which used to be Adobe Flash. So that's kind of where that all started from. So get on out there and give it a try.